Wealthy woman mocked the waitress, then saw her, wearing a bracelet. She lost 20 years ago. "Excuse me," Evelyn said sharply, snapping her fingers in the air. "I asked for lemon in my water, not lime." Her voice cut through the quiet buzz of the restaurant like a blade. The young waitress, a soft-spoken black woman in her mid-20s, froze for a moment, her hands trembling slightly as she nodded. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll fix that right away." Evelyn sighed loudly, glancing at her diamond watch. "Honestly, how hard is it to get a simple order right?" She muttered loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Her tone dripped with irritation, the kind of cold superiority that made people shrink around her. The waitress disappeared toward the kitchen, her steps quick but graceful. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs, the pearls around her neck gleaming under the chandelier's soft light. She was elegant, wealthy, and well aware of it. A woman who'd built her life on control. Control over people, places, and her image. But when the waitress returned, Evelyn's irritation vanished in an instant. Her eyes, sharp and critical a moment ago, widened as they fell on something small, glinting in the waitress's wrist. A bracelet. Not just any bracelet. Her bracelet. It was delicate and old, a gold chain with a tiny heart charm engraved with the initials E and L. Evelyn's breath caught. That bracelet had been gone for 20 years. She blinked, trying to focus, wondering if her mind was playing tricks. The charm, the faded engraving, even the tiny dent near the clasp, all of it was the same. No mistake. It was hers. Her voice came out slower this time, trembling just slightly. Where did you get that bracelet?" The waitress looked startled. "Oh, this?" she said, glancing at it and smiling faintly. "It's old. Been with me for as long as I can remember." Evelyn's chest tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. The clinking of silverware faded, replaced by a low hum in her ears. 20 years ago. That summer, that fire, that loss, it all flashed through her mind like lightning. I used to have one just like it," Evelyn said softly, her voice almost distant. The waitress nodded politely, not catching the storm behind those calm eyes. "Really? Small world, huh?" she said with a little laugh before walking away, leaving Evelyn staring, frozen, speechless, and haunted by something she couldn't yet name. The charm still sparkled faintly as the waitress disappeared behind the kitchen doors, and Evelyn sat there, heart pounding, her reflection in the wine glass trembling. Because that bracelet wasn't just lost, it was buried with someone she once loved. Evelyn sat frozen at her table long after the waitress left, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped tight around her glass. The noise of the restaurant faded into a dull hum, plates clinking, forks scraping, laughter echoing. None of it reached her. All she could see was that gold bracelet glimmering against the waitress's dark skin. Her mind drifted back. 20 years, to a summer that changed everything. She could still smell the salt from the ocean that evening, still hear the sound of waves crashing behind the small beach cafe she and her sister used to run. Lydia. Even saying her name in her mind felt like touching an open wound. Lydia was everything Evelyn wasn't. Soft-spoken, kind, full of light. Evelyn had been the ambitious one, chasing luxury and status, while Lydia stayed content with the simple things: morning coffee, laughter, and that little bracelet she never took off. It had been Evelyn's gift to her, a birthday present. The tiny charm was engraved with E and L. "Sisters forever," Lydia had said, hugging her tight. Evelyn smiled back then, not knowing it would be the last time she'd see her alive. The accident happened that same night. A short circuit in the old cafe kitchen. Fire spread fast. Evelyn was out with her fiancé, celebrating her latest business deal when the call came. By the time she reached the beach, it was too late. Lydia was gone. They found only her bracelet in the ashes. Or so Evelyn thought, because she'd kept that bracelet in a small jewelry box, the one that mysteriously disappeared a week later when she moved away to start over. And now, 20 years later, that same bracelet was glowing on the wrist of a stranger. Her heartbeat quickened. Her throat felt dry. There had to be an explanation. A copy, A coincidence. Something. But deep down, she knew there wasn't. She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone, pretending to scroll while watching the waitress from across the room. The girl laughed as she served another table, her kindness shining even through exhaustion. There was something familiar in her eyes, something warm that reminded Evelyn of Lydia's gentle smile. When the waitress returned with Evelyn's bill, Evelyn's hand trembled as she took it. "What's your name, dear?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The waitress smiled. "Lena," she said. The name hit Evelyn like thunder. Lena. Lydia used to talk about naming her daughter that one day. Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. The world seemed to tilt, time folding over itself. She watched as Lena walked away again, that gold bracelet catching the light, a ghost from a life Evelyn had buried in guilt and grief. For the first time in years, tears welled in her eyes, not the kind that fall quickly, but the kind that sting and stay, pressing against the walls of your heart until you can't breathe. Somewhere deep down, Evelyn knew this wasn't a coincidence. It was something bigger, something she wasn't ready to face. Not yet. Morning light spilled over the skyline as Evelyn's car cut through miles of highway that led back to the coastal town she'd left behind. Every mile felt heavier, every familiar sign like a voice whispering, "You can't outrun the past forever." The air grew saltier the closer she got to the shore. When she finally reached the old town, nothing looked quite the same, except the feeling in her chest. The cafe was gone. In its place stood a small flower shop. She parked across the street, staring through the window at where the counter once stood, the spot where Lydia used to hum while flipping pancakes, where little Lena's laughter once filled the room. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement as she stepped inside. The shop smelled of lavender and soil, and a woman arranging daisies behind the counter looked up with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you find something?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "I used to own a cafe here. A long time ago." The woman's expression softened. "You must be talking about the Carter Sisters Cafe. My grandma used to come here every weekend. Said it was the happiest place in town until that fire." The words stung, even after all these years. Evelyn forced a nod. "Yes, I'm Evelyn Carter." Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. "You're that Evelyn?" she whispered. "People thought you moved overseas." "I did," Evelyn said quietly. "But it seems my past didn't." The woman hesitated, then reached under the counter and pulled out a small tin box. "When we were clearing out the old lot, my dad found this buried under the back steps. Said it might have belonged to you." Inside the rusted box lay pieces of charred wood, a melted key, and a half-burned photograph. Lydia, smiling with baby Lena in her arms. Evelyn's hands shook as she traced the picture's edges. "That's her," she whispered. "My sister. And the child she wanted to raise." The shopkeeper tilted her head. "You know, a lady came by here a few years ago asking about this place too. She said her mama died in that fire and she wanted to see where she came from. She wore a bracelet. Looked a lot like yours." Evelyn's breath caught. "What did she say her name was?" "Lena," the woman said. "Just Lena." Evelyn clutched the photo to her chest, tears finally breaking free. She'd come here seeking proof, and found a living echo of love instead. Outside, the ocean roared softly, the same as it did the night Lydia died. For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn whispered her sister's name aloud. "Lydia. I found her." But beneath the relief was something deeper, an ache that told her this journey wasn't over. She had seen the truth. Now she had to face it. Evelyn returned to the city with a storm in her heart. The drive felt endless, her reflection flickering in the car window like a stranger's face. She thought of Lydia's laugh, the way she used to braid her hair on quiet Sunday mornings, the promise they made to never let life pull them apart. And yet, it had. Now fate had thrown her a second chance wrapped in gilt and gold, a bracelet, a name, and a waitress who had no idea the woman she served was the reason her life began in ashes. The next afternoon, Evelyn dressed differently. No pearls, no diamonds, no designer heels. Just a simple gray sweater and an old coat she hadn't worn in years. She wanted to be human, not polished. She arrived at the restaurant quietly, avoiding the host's curious glance, and found a small corner table facing the window. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited. Minutes passed before she saw her, Lena, carrying a tray, her steps light, her smile the same soft curve Lydia once had. Evelyn's throat tightened. She watched her move from table to table, polite and graceful, unaware of the secret breathing between them. When Lena finally reached her, she paused, clearly recognizing the older woman from a few nights ago. "Oh, you're back," she said with a little smile. "I promise I got the lemon right this time." Evelyn chuckled softly, though her eyes were already misty. "I'm sure you did." Lena poured the water and set it down, and Evelyn couldn't help but stare at the bracelet again, the delicate gold chain catching the afternoon light like a memory reborn. "Lena," Evelyn began quietly, "do you mind if I ask you something personal?" Lena hesitated, curious. "Sure, I guess. Do you know where that bracelet came from? Did someone give it to you?" The young woman smiled faintly, brushing her thumb across the charm. "My mama left it for me before she passed. I don't remember her much, but the woman who raised me said she was kind, that she died trying to save someone in a fire." Evelyn's breath hitched. "A fire?" "Yeah," Lena nodded, unaware of the chaos rising in the older woman's chest. "They said it was some small beach cafe. I've always wanted to visit one day, just to see where she worked." Evelyn felt the room tilt slightly. She blinked hard, tears gathering like rain threatening to fall. Her voice broke when she whispered, "Your mother's name. Was it Lydia?" Lena's eyes widened. "How did you know that?" The air between them stilled. Thick, fragile, electric. Evelyn swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "Because," she said softly, her words trembling, "she was my sister." Lena froze. The tray in her hand slipped slightly, catching against the table. "What?" she breathed. Evelyn's tears finally fell. "I'm your aunt, Lena. I thought you were gone. All these years." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside the window kept moving. Cars passing, people laughing, while inside, time stood still. Lena's lips parted in disbelief, her eyes filling with confusion, then shock, then something softer, something that looked a lot like the past Evelyn had lost. Lena stood frozen, her tray trembling in her hands. "My aunt?" she whispered, eyes wide. "That can't be. My whole life I thought everyone from my mother's family was gone." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming freely now. "They told me you were gone too. I buried that bracelet, Lena. I thought I buried you with it." Lena set the tray down carefully and slid into the seat across from her. The air between them was thick with confusion, pain, and a strange, fragile hope. Evelyn's hands shook as she reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph, faded at the edges, but still clear enough to see two young black women smiling under the sun, a baby cradled between them. "That's you," Evelyn whispered. "You were only a few months old. Lydia loved you like her own blood." Lena's fingers traced the edge of the picture, her lips trembling. I've seen this photo before," she said softly. "In my foster home. They said it was found in my baby blanket. I never knew who the women were." Evelyn's heart shattered all over again. "Lydia begged the state to let her keep you," she said, voice breaking. "She found you outside our cafe one morning. We didn't know who your real mother was, but Lydia swore you were meant for us. And then that night," her voice faltered, the words burned in her throat. "The fire," Lena finished quietly. "They said my mother died saving someone." Evelyn nodded slowly, eyes full of shame. "She saved me. I was trapped in the back room and she came back for me. The smoke was everywhere. She pushed me out through a window, but she never made it out herself." For a long moment, neither spoke. The restaurant noise faded until it was just the two of them and the hum of fate pressing down. Lena's voice quivered. And you just left? You never came back? Evelyn swallowed hard. I couldn't face it. I blamed myself. I thought you'd died too. I ran, Lena. I built walls of money and marble around my guilt, but every night I heard her voice. I saw her face in my dreams. And now, here you are, wearing the same bracelet I buried with her. Tears slid down Lena's cheeks. She wanted to be angry, but she couldn't. The woman sitting before her wasn't the sharp-tongued customer from before. She was broken, human, raw. I don't know what to say, Lena whispered. Evelyn reached across the table, her voice trembling. You don't have to say anything. Just let me do something right this time. For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn wasn't running from the fire. She was walking back into it, hoping this time she could save what was left. Lena sat in silence, her eyes locked on the woman across from her. Everything she'd ever known about her life, or thought she knew, had just cracked open. Her aunt, her mother's sister, the same woman who had once snapped her fingers at her like she was invisible. It felt impossible to breathe. Evelyn's voice trembled. I understand if you hate me. You have every right to. Lena didn't speak. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Why now? She finally asked, her tone soft but sharp. Why come find me after all these years? Evelyn looked down at the bracelet on Lena's wrist, her voice barely a whisper. Because I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. And when I saw that bracelet on you, I realized maybe I hadn't. I've spent my whole life trying to bury my guilt with wealth, but it never filled the hole Lydia left behind. It never brought peace. Lena's throat tightened. You don't get to buy peace, she said quietly. Or forgiveness. Evelyn nodded, tears streaking down her face. I know, that's why I'm not asking for it. I just needed to tell you the truth, even if it breaks what's left of me. For a long moment, neither moved. The restaurant buzzed around them. Laughter, clinking dishes, life carrying on. But in that corner, time stood still. Lena studied Evelyn's face. The wrinkles etched deep. Not from age, but from years of carrying something too heavy to name. She saw pain, yes, but also honesty. The kind that comes when a soul finally runs out of lies. My whole life, Lena said softly. I thought my mother didn't care enough to stay alive for me. I thought I was abandoned. Evelyn reached out, her voice cracking. She didn't abandon you, Lena. She died saving me. She loved you more than her own life. Those words hit Lena like thunder. She tried to blink back the tears, but they fell anyway. Evelyn's hand hovered across the table, not demanding, just waiting. I can't undo what's been done. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be in your life, not to fix you, but to honor her. Lena stared at that trembling hand. Part of her wanted to pull away, to guard the wound that had been reopened. But another part, the part that still believed in kindness, that still carried Lydia's light, whispered something different. She placed her hand over Evelyn's. The older woman broke down completely, sobbing quietly. Not the shallow tears of guilt, but the kind that come from finally telling the truth after years of silence. Lena's own voice shook as she whispered, If my mama could forgive you. I guess I can try too. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. The kind of forgiveness that doesn't erase the past. It just stops it from owning you. They sat there, two women bound by pain and blood, by loss and love. A story that had burned once but was now beginning to heal. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, cleansing, like the world itself was exhaling. And for the first time in 2 decades, Evelyn didn't feel the fire anymore. She felt rain. Weeks passed after that day, and something inside both women began to shift. Evelyn no longer hid behind her wealth or her silence. She visited the restaurant often, not as a customer this time, but as family. Sometimes she'd wait until closing, help Lena wipe down tables, or simply sit by the window and listen as the young woman talked about her dreams. There was something healing in those conversations. Laughter where there once was guilt, peace where there once was shame. For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn felt human again. One evening, Lena found Evelyn waiting outside after work, holding a small velvet box. "What's this?" she asked, smiling gently. Evelyn opened it slowly. Inside was a new bracelet, identical to the one Lena wore. Only this one had 3 letters engraved, E, L, and L. Evelyn's voice trembled. "Evelyn, Lydia, and Lena," she said softly. "I had it made for us. I wanted you to have this, not as a replacement, but as a continuation, because family doesn't end with tragedy. It keeps going, if we let it." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, touching the charm with trembling fingers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I'll treasure it, the same way she treasured hers." They sat together on a park bench across from the restaurant, the evening breeze brushing against their faces. For the first time, Evelyn didn't feel like a stranger to this city. She felt rooted again, and Lena, though still healing, began to understand that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about freeing yourself from it. "Do you ever think she'd forgive me?" Evelyn asked quietly, her eyes glistening. Lena looked up at the stars and smiled through her tears. "She already did. You just never stopped long enough to hear it." The words hung in the air. Soft, final, sacred. Evelyn exhaled, her shoulders trembling as she let the last of her guilt go. For 20 years she'd carried a fire inside her, one that burned every joy she tried to hold. But now, sitting beside her niece, she felt the ashes cool, replaced by something warm, alive, and forgiving. As they stood to leave, Lena unclasped the old gold bracelet, the one that had started it all, and gently placed it in Evelyn's palm. "It belonged to you first," she said. Evelyn shook her head, tears falling freely. "No, sweetheart. It belongs to her, to your mama. You keep it. Let it remind you where you came from, and who loved you first." Lena closed her fingers around it, holding it close to her heart. The night air carried the faint sound of the ocean, distant, steady, eternal, just like Lydia's memory. As they walked away, the 2 bracelets glimmered side by side under the streetlight, one old, one new, but bound by the same unbroken thread: love, loss, and redemption. And as Evelyn finally smiled, truly smiled, the narrator's voice would fade in softly, like a whisper carried by the wind. "Sometimes, life takes from us what we think we can't live without, only to return it when we've learned how to love it right. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite the past. It redeems it." The end.